In 1914, the British Empire still believed history itself marched in step behind its drums. Red-coated memories of empire filled the minds of officers who saw war as a gentleman's affair, gallantry, tea before dawn, victory by tradition. From London's clubs to the naval docks at Portsmouth, confidence hummed like a hymn. The empire ruled a quarter of the world. Who could possibly outthink it? But beneath the polished boots lay a dangerous assumption. Intelligence, the quiet art of listening before striking, was still treated as a sideshow, a curiosity for scholars rather than soldiers. Admirals trusted their fleets, not their files. The Germans, they believed, might have engineers and chemists, but Britain had discipline and destiny. The telegraph cables that pulsed beneath the Atlantic were seen as tools of empire, not sources of peril. Yet change was already crackling through those very wires. Messages whispered across oceans faster than ships could sail. And inside those coded dots and dashes waited the new battlefield, unseen, unsung, and unprepared for. Britain's greatest strength, its faith in history, had become its blind spot. As Europe stumbled toward war, a few quiet minds in London began to sense the danger. They saw the empire's confidence for what it was, a lullaby sung too loudly. Soon, in the heart of Whitehall, they would gather in a cramped room of cigarette smoke and static, determined to give Britain new eyes. Out of arrogance would come awakening, and from silence, the sharp edge of intelligence. Before the first artillery shell ever fell, Germany had already woven a war of whispers. Across continents, its diplomats and generals spoke in numbers, ciphers, and mechanical clicks that no foreign ear could follow. They called it the Chiffre-Wesson, the cipher system, and within it lay the arteries of an empire. From Berlin to Mexico City, from Constantinople to Washington, thousands of encrypted cables pulsed through undersea wires, wrapped in mathematical armor. Each message was a thread in a vast web of secrecy that Germany believed unbreakable. Their pride was the diplomatic codebook known as 0075, a thick black ledger of numbers and phrases guarded more carefully than gold. Even if a single page was lost, replacements were sent instantly, sealed and escorted by trusted hands. To the German Foreign Office, encryption was more than security, it was certainty. The enemy might outgun them on land or sea, but no one, they believed, could outthink their machines. Messages leapt across the Atlantic through neutral cables, rerouted and disguised, sometimes bouncing through Sweden or South America before landing in Washington. The language of war had become arithmetic, faceless, formless, but lethal. Inside every code group of 5 digits lay orders for U-boats, negotiations for alliances, and the lifeblood of strategy itself. The Allies could only guess what those invisible threads carried. Every intercepted signal ended in frustration pages of incomprehensible numbers, mocking their curiosity. German operators, confident behind their walls of digits, joked that Britain could read stars before it could read their ciphers. But within that arrogance lay danger. For all its brilliance, Germany's web depended on one fragile truth that no outsider could ever find a single strand loose enough to pull. And far away, in a small smoky room in London, someone was about to start tugging. Long before code-breaking became legend, it began as tedium. In quiet coastal huts battered by wind and salt, British wireless operators hunched over crackling headphones, scribbling endless streams of Morse. They weren't spies or soldiers, most were telegraph clerks, hobbyists or retired sailors who could recognize a signal by rhythm alone. Day after day, they filled notebooks with coded chatter from the airwaves, not knowing if any of it mattered. They called their makeshift stations Y posts the earliest ears of British intelligence. The pay was poor, the hours endless, and the conditions bleak. Yet these men and a few women persisted with monastic patience. They listened through static for patterns others ignored. A repeated sequence, a faint call sign, a moment of silence before a message resumed. Every fragment they caught drifted back to London, to room 40, where the true decoding would begin. Inside the Admiralty, clerks stacked intercepted pages like kindling, knowing that somewhere in that forest of digits lay a secret worth burning for. The Empire might have been late to the Code War, but it now had something Germany lacked: obsession. The interceptors didn't have fancy equipment or perfect organization, but they had time, discipline, and the quiet thrill of knowing they were part of something larger. Slowly, a pattern began to form. Call signs connected, frequencies repeated. From the chaos of static, faint outlines of the German network appeared like constellations on a foggy night. Every note copied by those coastal hands became a brushstroke in the picture room 40 was painting. They were invisible soldiers, unarmed, unseen, and uncelebrated, yet their work would soon strike harder than any shell. Each intercepted spark carried the potential to change the war. And one day, amid those scribbles of noise, came a message unlike any other one that would reach across oceans and set the world ablaze. It began as another routine day in the tangled network of undersea cables and wireless stations. Messages clattered across the Atlantic, each one a mix of routine reports, diplomatic chatter, and coded lines that had become almost familiar to the British interceptors. Yet on January 16, 1917, amid the static and hum, one telegram stood apart. Its rhythm was deliberate, its origin unmistakable. Berlin. It pulsed through the wires like a heartbeat, urgent and precise. The interceptors leaned closer, pencils poised over sheets of Morse code, fingers tracing the dots and dashes as though they could absorb their meaning through touch. At first, it appeared ordinary, a diplomatic cipher among countless others. Yet there was something in its cadence, a certain weight, a tension beneath the numbers that made the experienced clerks pause. Their hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the instinct that history might just be whispering through the wires. The telegram was quickly flagged and forwarded to room 40, that dimly lit chamber of codebreakers who had become the Empire's unseen eyes. Outside, London's streets were gray with drizzle and winter fog. Unaware that in a tiny room upstairs, a document had arrived that would ripple across continents. The wires had delivered more than words, they had delivered a turning point, a single thread that could unravel alliances and ignite global reaction. No one yet knew the full significance. Yet within that brief moment, the pulse of fate had already begun to race. And the interceptors felt it, that quiet, electrifying sense that a message could, in the right hands, change everything. 400 words, section 3.2, breaking the code. The telegram reached room 40 like a challenge, a puzzle screaming for attention. Among the scattered desks, Nigel de Grey and William Montgomery sat in near silence, the faint scent of ink and coal smoke hanging in the air. De Grey, methodical and patient, scanned the cipher, his eyes flicking between numbers and columns, searching for patterns invisible to the untrained mind. Montgomery, younger but equally brilliant, leaned over stacks of intercepted fragments, scribbling calculations in the margins. Both understood the stakes. This was no ordinary exercise in translation. The message, if decoded, could reshape the war. For hours, they worked without interruption. The typewriters clicked in distant corners, telegraph sheets rustled, and outside, London moved through its foggy routine, unaware of the quiet tempest in the room above. Every line of code demanded attention. Mistakes could render the message meaningless, impatience could let it slip through history's fingers. De Grey traced repeating groups, noting substitutions, double-checking assumptions. Montgomery's hands moved with precision, a rhythm forged from months of practice, as he tested possibilities against previously intercepted German traffic. Slowly, the patterns emerged. A group of 5 numbers here, a repeated phrase there, until finally, after hours of mental labor, clarity appeared. Words took shape, not in ink or type, but in understanding. They read, secret offers, promises, and proposals of plans so audacious it seemed almost fictional. The brilliance lay not in the message itself, but in the quiet genius required to reveal it. The two men exchanged a glance, unspoken awe passing between them. In that moment, room 40 became a crucible of intellect and persistence, proof that patient, disciplined minds could triumph over the most sophisticated encryption the world had yet seen. Outside, the war raged with guns and mud, but here, the battle was fought with reason, deduction, and nerve. By the time the first translation was complete, The implications were staggering. Germany's private intentions were now in Britain's hands, a blueprint of strategy that could ignite nations. De Grey and Montgomery, anonymous heroes of a silent war, had just transformed a string of numbers into the spark that would alter history. The decoded telegram revealed a plan audacious in its simplicity and terrifying in its ambition. Germany had instructed its ambassador to Mexico to propose an alliance should the United States enter the war against the Central Powers. In return, Germany promised support for Mexico to reclaim territories lost in previous conflicts: Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. The words alone carried the weight of potential upheaval, a blueprint for war embedded in diplomatic phrasing. Room 40 absorbed the message in stunned silence. It was a revelation not of armies or guns, but of strategy and leverage, an attempt to manipulate nations with nothing more than ink, numbers, and promises. Britain realized immediately the explosive potential. If this telegram reached American eyes without interception, the United States could be provoked into full engagement. The war might expand far beyond Europe, reshaping global alliances overnight. The audacity was matched only by its danger. Germany assumed secrecy and silence, unaware that every word had already been captured. The plan that might have drawn Mexico into conflict was now a British advantage. Strategists understood the stakes. The telegram was not just information, it was a fulcrum on which the course of history could pivot. The power of letters became clear. Words on a page encoded, transmitted, and painstakingly decoded could carry consequences that artillery could not. Room 40 had transformed a secret into intelligence that would shock the world. In that moment, it was evident that in war, knowledge could be deadlier than any bullet, and that an empire's quiet persistence could alter the fate of nations without ever firing a single shot. Room 40 had done its work. The Zimmermann telegram lay decoded on the desk, its words stark and unyielding. Germany attempting to entice Mexico into war against the United States. The British Admiralty faced a perilous question. To reveal the message publicly could provoke a powerful neutral nation into action, but it would also expose the remarkable success of their intelligence operation. The stakes were immense, and the room hummed with tension. Every officer knew the implications. If Germany discovered that their codes had been broken, the entire system of interception would collapse. Future messages would be re-encrypted, alliances might falter, and Britain's hard-won advantage would vanish. Yet keeping silent carried its own moral weight. The United States, unaware, might enter the conflict unprepared, and the opportunity to prevent escalation or influence the war's direction could be lost forever. Debates stretched through the corridors of Whitehall. Some urged secrecy, insisting that strategic advantage outweighed diplomacy. Others argued that letting the truth remain hidden was a kind of complicity. The United States deserved to know the threat on its doorstep. In private offices, telegrams were read and reread, advisors whispered, and a nation's conscience weighed heavily against cold calculation. Finally, a compromise emerged. The British would disclose the telegram selectively, ensuring that the United States received it without revealing the source. It was a delicate dance, a fusion of ethics and strategy, where timing was as crucial as truth itself. Every decision carried consequences that could ripple across oceans. In that moment, Room 40 triumph became more than code-breaking. It became the pivot point of diplomacy, a reminder that in war, the mind can be as lethal as the sword, and that knowledge, carefully wielded, could reshape alliances before a single shot was fired. The decision to reveal or conceal would soon set in motion events no one could have predicted. When the telegram reached Washington, it arrived quietly, carried not by cannon or convoy, but through the precise channels of diplomacy and intelligence. Officials in the State Department unrolled the document, scanning the decoded lines that promised German support for Mexico against their own country. The words seemed almost unreal, a plot of audacity that defied expectation. Yet the authenticity was undeniable. The British had ensured the message appeared legitimate, leaving no trace of Room 40 involvement.
President Wilson and his advisors read in stunned silence.
Isolationist calm, the comfortable notion that the Atlantic could shield the United States from European entanglements, dissolved in an instant. The telegram was a reminder that the world was not distant, that the reach of modern warfare and diplomacy was global, and that neutrality could no longer be assumed. In those quiet chambers, the abstract machinery of espionage collided with the tangible reality of threat. The implications were immediate and profound. Newspapers would soon print the telegram in full, carrying shock and outrage to millions of citizens. Congress debated, politicians spoke, and public opinion shifted as Americans confronted the reality that Europe's war could touch their doorstep. A single string of words, captured and decoded thousands of miles away, had shattered the illusion of safety and isolation. For Wilson, the telegram crystallized a difficult decision. It was not merely about responding to Germany, but about asserting national integrity and preparing a country long hesitant to enter global conflict. The quiet labor of British codebreakers had now ignited American awareness, turning an invisible intelligence victory into a diplomatic earthquake. The Zimmermann telegram, once a collection of numbers and letters, had become a catalyst. From the shadows of Room 40 to the halls of Washington, its revelation reshaped perception, accelerated strategy, and nudged a hesitant nation toward war. The unseen struggle of clerks and mathematicians had transformed into a force capable of redirecting history, proving that sometimes knowledge alone can wield power greater than armies. The moment the Zimmermann telegram became public, American newspapers erupted. Headlines screamed of German audacity, betrayal, and secret plots against the nation. Citizens who had once argued for neutrality now felt a moral and existential urgency. The distant war in Europe was no longer abstract, it was personal. Families read the telegram over breakfast tables, imagining their own states offered as prizes in a foreign empire's plan. Outrage spread quietly at first, then with unstoppable momentum, touching towns and cities across the country. President Wilson, once hesitant, found the political winds shifting beneath him. Congress and cabinet members sensed that neutrality could no longer be maintained. The telegram had stripped away excuses, revealing that staying passive was complicity in the face of provocation. Moral clarity, fueled by public indignation, crystallized into decisive action. On April 6, 1917, the United States declared war on Germany. The country that had once watched Europe from a safe distance now joined the fray with industry, manpower, and a resolve sharpened by truth. The power of information intercepted, decoded, and revealed had transformed the course of history. The actions of a few meticulous codebreakers had indirectly mobilized a continent, proving that intelligence was more than strategy, it could awaken nations. And as American troops began to prepare for overseas deployment, the world recognized a new actor, no longer isolated, ready to reshape the balance of power with every march, every rifle, every calculated decision. The telegram, once hidden in a dimly lit room in London, had become the spark that ignited full-scale engagement. Words on a page, carefully unearthed and interpreted, had turned outrage into action, shifting the tide of war in ways few could have imagined. Room 40 triumph extended far beyond a single message. The meticulous work of interceptors, cryptographers, and linguists had revealed the potential of intelligence as a science systematic, patient, and decisive. No longer was espionage mere rumor, deception, or fieldcraft. It had become a disciplined art, capable of shaping world events without a shot fired. From cramped offices filled with telegraphs and code books, a new paradigm emerged. Analysts measured patterns, recorded probabilities, and decoded secrets, transforming instinct into method. The success of Room 40 showed that intellect and persistence could rival armies in influence, that the quiet study of numbers and signals could redirect the destinies of nations. For Britain, it proved that a small, dedicated team could wield disproportionate power through precision and foresight. The legacy of these efforts endured. The principles forged in smoke-filled rooms and cluttered desks became the foundation for modern intelligence agencies, a testament to human ingenuity, discretion, and the patient pursuit of truth. Nigel de Grey, William Montgomery, and countless unnamed clerks had demonstrated that influence could flow silently, invisibly, and yet with unstoppable force. In the aftermath of the war, intelligence was no longer a peripheral concern. It was central to national security, diplomacy, and strategy. Room 40 had illuminated a new battlefield, one fought with minds rather than guns, where the ability to listen, interpret, and act was as vital as any army. The lessons of those early codebreakers echo through history, reminding us that insight, patience, and ingenuity often shape the world in ways more profound than power alone. From a small, smoke-filled chamber in London, modern intelligence was born subtle, precise, and quietly revolutionary, proving that the unseen can change everything. Long after the guns fell silent and treaties were signed, Room 40 work remained largely invisible. The clerks, cryptographers, and linguists returned to ordinary lives, their names unrecorded in history books, their brilliance known only to a few. Yet the echoes of their labor resonated across continents, shaping diplomacy, strategy, and the very course of war. In quiet rooms filled with papers and the faint smell of ink, they had turned numbers into power, patience into influence, and intellect into action that no army alone could achieve. There is a strange serenity in their legacy. They fought not with muskets or cannons, but with minds sharpened to precision. Their victories were silent yet profound, measured in preventing disasters and reshaped nations. Each intercepted telegram, each deciphered line, was a testament to human perseverance and the subtle force of focus. As we reflect on their achievement, there is gratitude not for spectacle, but for dedication, for the patience to listen to whispers and wires, and for the courage to trust intellect over impulse. The true power of Room 40 lies not in headlines or medals, but in the quiet proof that even in the shadow of war, unseen minds can change the world.